Okay, this is a tricky topic, but it's time to talk about Britney Spears' post-conservatorship behaviour, because I think that there is a narrative that if you talk about it, then you're somehow undermining the Free Britney movement, which successfully freed her from her conservatorship. Now, for those who don't know, Britney was under a conservatorship, which meant that her affairs were controlled by her father primarily. And by affairs, I mean money, business, what she did, where she went, even probably who she hooked up with. And that conservatorship started in 2008 after she had a well-publicised breakdown. And that lasted for a full 13 years until 2021. November 2021 to be precise, when a judge freed her from that conservatorship. And that freedom was as a result of a lot of Britney Spears' fans really questioning what was going on there, questioning quite loudly, until it reached mainstream media outlets like the New York Times, who did a documentary on it, and some other channels did documentaries on it also. And this led to Britney getting a new lawyer and freeing herself from that arrangement. Now, nobody is disputing the fact that the conservatorship should not have gone on as long as it did. It's not fair for somebody to work and work and work in the way that Britney was working. She did multiple tours, she appeared on TV shows, she made appearances. So if she's able to do that, why wouldn't she be able to be in charge of her own affairs, is the argument. And that is what I agree with as well. I think it was good that she was freed from that conservatorship. However, we can't deny that her behaviour since that conservatorship ended has been alarming at times. There have been multiple instances of bizarre behaviour, from dancing with knives really close to her, claiming that she burned down her bathroom, dancing in fireplaces, dancing with dog feces in the background, and the list goes on and on. Generally, in some of her videos, she has an affect which indicates that she may not be entirely well. The way she speaks now is very different to the way that she spoke when she was in a conservatorship and before she was in a conservatorship. I'll put some examples in here.
It's the third year of me being under that, and I felt like a lot of the things were planned for me to do, and being told what to do. And I was just like, for this one, I want to make it my baby, and I want to do it myself. And I was very strategic about the way I did it.
Good morning. Hey, good morning.
Making bread where it takes 6 hours to make it, where it smells like cake through the whole house.
She broke up with her husband Sam after just a year of marriage and moved on to her housekeeper, Paul Solis. Well, I don't know if he was her housekeeper. He definitely worked in her house doing odd jobs. Now, there was a rumour that she cheated on Sam with Paul, and that's why Sam left. We don't know if that's true, but it hasn't been denied by Sam. So Paul Solis, I don't think anyone would dispute the fact that he's not a great guy. He has 9 children and he doesn't take care of any of them, allegedly. And actually, according to one of his baby mothers, who is the mother of 5 of his children, I believe. He's also a convicted dealer. They were on and off for years and they split up a few months ago. Recently, an ex of Britney's brother, Brian, posted on social media that Brian took Britney to Mexico to get Mexican Adderall. Adderall is a stimulant that's prescribed in the United States for people with ADHD generally. And Britney said in her memoir that that was a substance that she preferred back in the day. Now, the thing with Mexican Adderall is that a lot of the time, it may not actually be Adderall that's being sold. It may actually be Tina. Tina is very addictive, and there have been rumors that Britney has dabbled in that in the past. Now, what does all of this mean for Britney? Well, Britney Spears' fans are very sensitive to any kind of observation about Britney's behaviour, more specifically the change in her behaviour since the conservatorship has ended. It's pretty clear to me that whatever medication they had her on during the conservatorship, she now does not take, and that has really affected her behaviour. Now, should Britney be on medications that she doesn't want to be on? Potentially no, but that doesn't mean that we can't observe what's being put in front of us. This is all publicly available information. A lot of this is from media Britney herself is putting out there. So of course we're going to draw conclusions about that. And some of it makes it seem like she is struggling in some way. Now, it doesn't seem that there is anyone around her who is able to, I don't want to say help her, but who can really advise her in terms of what she could potentially do to maybe improve. And it may be because she doesn't feel like she needs to improve. Perhaps she feels like she's free for the first time. I mean, there was that incident years ago when her sons asked her to stop posting nude pictures of herself online. And she said, no, because I want to feel free. Now, I understand that Britney wants to feel free, but she also didn't seem to have much concern for her kids who were in school and perhaps maybe be affected by having images like that posted of their mum online. Now, does that mean she should stop posting those pictures? Of course not, but maybe being a little bit mindful of her sons might have gone a long way. Obviously, she's now back in touch with one of her sons and he hangs out at her house a lot, which is great. But I think that there is something going on there, and it's a tricky one because there is an issue about what we do with people who perhaps aren't necessarily in the peak of mental health, but are still able to function to a degree. Now, there's an issue as to whether you intervene, because a person does have the freedom to make bad choices, or what we would consider to be bad choices, without intervention. That's one of the blessings and curses potentially of being an adult. So what would Britney need to do really for somebody to say, hey, maybe we just take a break here and reevaluate and try and get you some help, some mental health service? Do things like that just continue indefinitely until when? I mean, there have been reports that Britney blows through money and that because she's not bringing any money in, there might be some issues there. Do you just wait until the money runs out, essentially, then to do something? And that is what is really tricky about this situation. But then again, it seems as though if something bad does happen, i.e. she does lose her money or something worse happens, people will say, why didn't anybody step in? Well, the reason why nobody stepped in this instance is because they've been told that any observations of certain behaviours are anti-Britney, anti-freedom, and can't be made at all. So it's a very difficult situation, and it must be very difficult for those around her as well, because we've seen what's happened to her family when obviously they had intervened, and a lot of that was for their own benefit as well, to keep the money going. But it has to be said that Britney's functioning did seem a little bit higher when they were involved, but rightfully they are no longer involved because Britney does not want them involved, because she feels that she was exploited, and it seems as though she was, because she should have had more of a say in what goes on in her life, especially if she was working to the level that she was working. But now it seems as though nobody can say anything without risking being banished from her life entirely. I hope for her sake that this is all just basic eccentricity. There's nothing wrong with being eccentric, and I hope that's all it is. Just from observing people in my life and, other people's lives, it seems as though some of these symptoms are a little bit more than that, but we'll have to just wait and see, I suppose. But I do think the balance between freedom and care is always a tricky one, specifically with people who have mental health issues, because people with mental health issues deserve their own autonomy and deserve the right to run their lives as they see fit. But at the same time, if they're making decisions that aren't for their own benefit, which could lead to negative consequences down the line, severe negative consequences, then the question is if somebody should intervene and when. This is all complicated by the history of the conservatorship and Britney having been subjected to some very invasive intervention. She said that somebody put an IUD in her so that she couldn't conceive, and that is obviously beyond the pale. So it makes sense that she wouldn't be open to any kind of help now, considering what the help did to her last time. There was a rumour a few years back that when she was with Sam, her ex-husband, people did try to stage an intervention, but she found out about it and immediately quashed it. And I don't think anybody has ever tried again. So I want to say I love Britney's art and there was nobody like her, and it just would be a shame if people were scared to intervene knowing that something is wrong because they don't want to risk the wrath of her fans. That's all. But we hope that it's just eccentricity and that's all it is. So rapper Saweetie has said that she feels that she's been punished for being pretty.
I saw it on TikTok. They were like, they talk about pretty privilege, but they don't talk about pretty punishment. There's been so many times I've just been counted out, and I know that it's behind animosity. I know it's because of a hidden agenda, but it makes me work harder. But this has happened like my whole life. So it's like what I deal with in the industry is just, you know, different face, same case.
Oof. Now, the phrase pretty punishment has come up a lot in recent times, and I think it's time we discussed it together because I have some thoughts on this. Now, Saweetie is far from the only girl, as I said, to really feel that their good looks, have really hindered them in some way. Jessica Biel once said that she didn't think that she was getting roles because she was too pretty. A lot of Madison Beer fans have said that she hasn't reached her full potential in her music career because she's too pretty. And Madison has not said that herself, by the way. That's her fan, so I don't want to attribute that to Madison because she's never said that. And all over TikTok, there have been various girls who feel that people are really mean to them and their life has been hindered through being pretty. Now, as somebody who used to be very unattractive, and before you say, you're still unattractive now, well, you should have seen me 10 years ago, okay? So I think I have some experience of glowing up, and the way that people treat you is like night and day. So I really don't believe in pretty punishment. When I lost weight and started to look more like people wanted me to look and more socially acceptable, my life changed. People treated me nicely. They left me alone. They didn't shout at me in the street. And I'm not going to say I was shouted at in the street regularly, but it did happen. And now it never happens. Ever. Because there's a privilege to looking a certain way, and by a certain way, for me, I mean not offensive. I can blend in. Nobody's going to look at me like, ugh, you know, you just go through the crowd. No problems, no harassment, no feeling like, oh, am I going to be able to go into this store and wear these clothes without people looking at me a certain way? No, it's just easier. So when I hear pretty girls who have always been pretty say that prettiness has really harmed their life prospects, I tend to believe that there's something else going on. And I've noticed this, and please don't take this the wrong way, right? Because I know that everybody has their struggles. But I've noticed a sense of entitlement when it comes to women who look a certain way, which is that I look this way, so things should be good for me, right? Like, I look like this, so my life should be going really well and people should be treating me nicely. And so when that doesn't happen, it's like, well, it must be because I'm too pretty. No, that's life, right? Life can be unfair and disadvantageous to all of us. It's nothing to do with looks necessarily. It's to do with just how life can sometimes pan out. You're not really owed anything because you're pretty, right? You don't get... And that's the thing, when you're used to special treatment because of your looks, when you don't get it or when that's removed, it probably can feel like oppression, right? But in my opinion, Saweetie, I have no issue with Saweetie. I think she seems like a great girl, although I don't think it was great that she slept with Cardi B's husband, right? But apart from that, she seems like a great girl. But I would say that her career has really been helped by her appearance, particularly in the Black community. Having a looser textured hair and a more mixed appearance really did help her, because I don't think people were initially interested in Saweetie because of her rhymes necessarily. They were interested because she had the look, and that made people want to see what she had to say and how she was as a musician. So I'm not sure that that hindered her. If pretty punishment was a thing in the music industry, how would Nicki Minaj, Beyonce, Rihanna have risen to the top? And why does it seem that all the major pop stars are absolutely beautiful then, if being pretty is punished in the industry? That doesn't really make any sense. And I think sometimes good-looking people can confuse facing life's misfortunes with pretty punishment. No, sometimes women are treated badly. Sometimes that can be misogyny. Sometimes that can just be because people are mean, right? People are very unkind sometimes. You know, we can all be unkind. And so let's not get it twisted. I'm going to take a stance, which is that I don't think pretty punishment exists. I don't. And I think that life's misfortunes befall us all to greater or lesser degrees. And just because you happen to experience that as a pretty person doesn't mean that it's because you're pretty. It could be because that's just how life goes sometimes. And if you really feel that being pretty is a punishment, get rid of the prettiness. One can very easily make oneself less attractive. It's really, really very simple. I know that because I've changed my looks many times. You can be less attractive and you can be more attractive. A lot of people have been strongly encouraged by society to make themselves more attractive to get ahead, myself being one of them. If pretty punishment really is a thing, why not be less attractive then and see where that gets you? See if it really does advance your career if you are less attractive, or advance your dating life if you're less attractive. That would be a great experiment if somebody was willing to do it. If a pretty person went undercover as a mid person, just to see whether it helps. I strongly suspect in fact, that it won't help matters in any way. But does anybody want to volunteer to try it? I'm always so confused by girls like Lori Harvey, Justine Skye, and Stacey Baby, or Stas as she's known now. People who are in proximity to some of the wealthiest, most connected, most famous people in the world, but seem to have no interest in capitalizing on their good fortune. Can you believe that Lori Harvey started her skincare line at the same time, well, in the same year as Hailey Bieber? She barely promoted it. Stacey started a podcast, which could have been huge due to her very unique life circumstances, but she was unable to share even the most basic anecdote of interest and completely abandoned the project after a few episodes. And Justine puts out music here and there, but not consistently at all. Like, in my mind, all of them are nuts. Like, you mean Lori and Justine, the most beautiful girls with the most gorgeous skin, couldn't do a collaboration with Hailey Bieber like, say, Tate McRae did or Matilda Djerf did? You mean that Stacey couldn't start a swimwear line with Kylie, given that she's always on holiday? I mean, I'm not kidding. This girl's life is a permanent holiday. And Kylie's never done a day's work. She's also on holiday all the time. They couldn't start a swimwear line together. It would sell out immediately. Stacey would probably get $100 million exit from a brand like that if it's done properly. But nope, not interested. And what? Kylie, Kendall, Kim, none of their, like Drake even. Drake is Stacey's best friend apparently. Maybe they've hooked up, I don't know. But none of them can set you up with a decent money guy who can invest in a business that you want to set up. Like, this is crazy to me. Or it was crazy to me, shall I say. But then I did a TikTok about it and it really got me thinking. And then I watched Justine's interview with Owen Thiel, who is another celebrity-adjacent semi-nepo baby. And it all became very clear to me. There is no mystery here. They just aren't that ambitious. Justine spent a lot of this interview with Owen not promoting her new music, not talking about her artistic inspirations, not talking about her passions, but talking about who could and could not get into the Chateau Marmont, one of those celebrity hotspots, very iconic, but also extremely meaningless in the grand scheme of things. She also spent a lot of time talking about how she parties every day when she's in Ibiza and just all of the things she does with her cool friends, like just complete like fluff. And I've just realized that that's really what they're interested in. They're not really like, they don't have that drive to really push. And I think that's probably why their celebrity friends are attracted to them, right? Because they must come across people who are interested in using them for various things. And it must be nice to be around girls who really just aren't bothered about all of that and really just want to chill out on a yacht with whichever rapper of the moment, get a little change here and there, get a couple of million, buy a house and just relax. Like, or I don't even know if they've bought a house. Hopefully they're investing some of this money and not just going on holiday all the time, but I'm sure they're smarter than that. But they just want to be in the mix. They just want to be in the pictures. They just want to be on TMZ and, you know, get that aloe yoga deal or whatever. Like, they're not trying to make that generational money that can sustain their grandkids, for example, you know? And that is probably why they're so accepted, as I said, by these celebrities. Like, I could not be around Hailey Bieber personally without thinking how I can have my own come up, because she was the kind of lower tier Nepo baby who really social climbed her more famous friends to the top. So that arguably Rhode does better than Kylie Cosmetics, which would have been unheard of 10 years ago when Kylie was at her height, right? But now Hailey surpassed her and has still managed to maintain the friendship, so they're not even resentful of her. That is artful social climbing and really deserves a lot of admiration. But I would be, if I were Laurie, Justine or Stassi, I'd be like, how am I going to do that? I need to get going with that. But no, they just want to be on the yachts. They just want to be relaxing, sunbathing. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. They're just true bohemians in that sense. They want to be in the sun, they want to be partying, they want to be the most popular girls in LA or New York or whatever. They want to date the latest popping guy, you know, and that's just what socialites do and that's what they want. They're not really thinking beyond that. But before I was so confused. I was like, are they being held back? Like, is there like some weird Illuminati thing going on here? Like, no. They're just not that ambitious. And that's that. But it's like, wow, imagine if you did have somebody ambitious who was in that position. Maybe they'd get ousted though. Maybe they're not tolerated. Maybe they want their friends to be not hungry tigers. I remember hungry tigers is a phrase that Paris Hilton used to call people who were around her to social climb her. And she felt that she could sniff them out immediately and then she would just banish them. So maybe they have to be quite careful to maintain their position within that circle and to get into the whatever club, the nice guy or whatever, to get the VIP section or whatever, bottle service or whatever things they care about, you know? Maybe to keep those perks coming, to keep going on the nice vacations with Kylie or whatever, they need to watch themselves a little bit. And I guess Hailey was born into a certain degree of fame, even though it has been slightly exaggerated just how influential her side of her family was. They were not really able to really give her much except for access to some of these people, which Hailey utilized to the fullest extent, right? And I just wonder why the girls don't do the same. But I understand, they just don't care that much. They just don't care that much, and we all care about different things. But sometimes I'm like, damn, if only someone who did care was in that spot, like you or I. But yes, they're just not that ambitious. Mystery solved. Okay, my favourite image of the week is this one, which features Lenny Kravitz and his then girlfriend, Adriana Lima. This is the second appearance that Adriana Lima has made in my favourite images. And, you know, I can't help that. She is breathtaking, okay? But really, to me, what this image represents is what we've lost in today's dating scene, right? I think a lot of us have been online dating. I have been dating recently. I don't know if anybody cares about my dating escapades. I doubt that you guys do, to be honest. But I have been online dating. And let me tell you what's been lost. It's that sensuality is what has been lost. When we gamify everything, including our romantic interactions, we've lost that chemistry, that when you look at somebody and you just know that they're looking at you and they're feeling the same way. We've lost that because we've given every aspect of our lives to these huge internet service providers, right? And I think we can all agree that that has not been for the best. And this is just one thing that's been lost. So if we look at this image of Lenny and Adriana, there's just so much unsaid and unspoken between them. The way that Robert Maxwell, the photographer, has lit the space, it just conveys a tension, an amazing, good tension you need in the beginning stages of something amazing romantically. And this shoot was for Vibe magazine and it's from 2001. And I said last week, there was this brief period, late 90s, pre 9/11, that just seemed very free. And it's no surprise to me that this photo shoot has fallen within that time period. The other photos from the shoot were just as fulfilling. We're just as sensual. And I think that any short guy who claims that he can never get a girlfriend in this environment should really look up to Lenny Kravitz, or look down depending on their actual height. He's 5'7", okay, which is not tall, but his presence, you would never know that he was not a tall guy because his presence just transcends that. He has so much presence, so much soulfulness. And that's another thing we're missing. Soulful interactions, genuine romance, genuine tension, genuine freedom, you know? And that's what this image represents to me. And it's worth checking out the whole spread. Some of it's a bit too suggestive for YouTube, and I'm not trying to annoy YouTube at this stage because I've only just started doing it. But I would check it out. Just an amazing photo shoot. Okay, bye.